The rain tapped lightly against the window pane, a steady rhythm that usually lulled me to sleep, but tonight, as I glanced up from my book in the dim glow of the bedside lamp, there was a shadow just beyond the glass. Not a branch swaying in the wind, not the neighbor's cat prowling the fence line. It was a face, pale, indistinct, pressed close enough to the screen that I could make out the outline of eyes staring back at me. My heart stuttered, and I blinked hard, expecting it to vanish like a trick of the light. But it didn't. For a split second longer, it lingered, then melted into the darkness as a car passed on the street below, its headlights slicing through the night. I pulled the curtains shut with trembling hands and told myself it was nothing, just exhaustion from another long day at the office. But sleep didn't come easy after that. My name is Emily Harper, and I've lived in this quiet suburb of Elmwood for the past 3 years. Elmwood's the kind of place where everyone knows your name but not much else. Neat rows of 2-story houses with manicured lawns, white picket fences that actually mean something, and streets that wind lazily toward the edge of town where the cornfields start. I moved here after college, chasing a job at the local insurance firm. It's steady work, the kind that pays the mortgage on my modest ranch-style home and leaves weekends free for farmers' markets and weekend hikes along the old rail trail. Life here is predictable, almost soothing in its sameness. Mornings start with coffee from the diner on Main Street, where the waitress Barb always refills your mug without asking. Evenings end with the distant hum of the highway, a reminder that the world's bigger but not so far away. That face in the window, I chalked it up to stress. Work had been piling up, endless spreadsheets, client calls that dragged on past 5. And lately, I'd been feeling the weight of living alone. My sister in Chicago kept suggesting I get a cat or join one of those book clubs at the library, but I liked the quiet, or at least I thought I did. The next morning, I shook it off over my usual black coffee, the steam rising in lazy curls from the mug. The sky was overcast, the kind of grey that hangs low over the Midwest, promising more rain. I grabbed my keys and headed out, locking the door behind me with a click that echoed in the empty driveway. My house sits on a corner lot with large windows facing the street and the side yard. Great for natural light, or so the realtor said when I bought it. As I backed out, I glanced at the living room window out of habit. Nothing there, just the sheer curtains fluttering slightly from the draft. The drive to work was the same as always, past the elementary school where kids in yellow buses waved from the windows, then the gas station with its flickering sign advertising 2-for-1 hot dogs. I tuned into the local radio station, the one that plays classic rock between traffic updates and ads for the hardware store. By the time I pulled into the office parking lot, the incident from last night felt like a distant dream, but that afternoon, as I sat at my desk sorting through emails, a prickling sensation started at the back of my neck. It was subtle at first, like someone had turned up the air conditioning just a notch too high. I looked up from my screen and peered out the window of the break room, where I'd gone to grab a vending machine soda. The office building is on the second floor of a strip mall, overlooking the parking lot and a row of fast food joints. Through the glass, across the lot, I saw it again, that same face, hovering in the window of the laundromat next door. The features were clearer this time in the daylight. A man, mid-40s maybe, with sharp cheekbones and dark hair slicked back. He wasn't moving, just standing there, gaze fixed in my direction. I froze, the soda can halfway to my lips. It couldn't be. The laundromat was empty. I'd driven past it 100 times and never seen anyone inside during the week. Heart pounding, I set the can down and stepped closer to the window, but when I blinked, he was gone. The glass reflected only the empty machines and the hum of dryers in the distance. A co-worker, Tom from accounting, wandered in behind me. "You okay, Em? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a laugh, waving it off. Just zoning out. Too much coffee. But as I walked back to my desk, the unease settled in my stomach like a stone. Coincidence, right? Faces in windows. Our brains play tricks, filling in shadows with patterns. That's what I told myself on the drive home. Windows down to let the cool air chase away the jitters. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed the mail had arrived early. The box was stuffed with the usual: bills, a flyer for the county fair, and a catalogue from some garden supply place I didn't remember ordering from. I flipped through it absent-mindedly while walking up the porch steps, then paused at the front door. Through the sidelight window, the narrow pane of glass beside the entrance, I caught a glimpse of movement inside the house. No, not movement. That face again, peering out from the hallway mirror's reflection, or was it the window in the kitchen beyond? It was fleeting, like a shadow passing through the room. I dropped the mail, fumbling for my keys. The door swung open to silence, the house empty and still, just as I'd left it. The kitchen window overlooked the backyard fence. Nothing but overgrown grass and the neighbor's shed. I checked the locks, the doors, even peeked into the basement stairs, but there was nothing. No footprints in the dew on the grass outside, no sign of disturbance, just my imagination running wild on a rainy week. That night, I double-checked every curtain before bed, the house feeling smaller, the walls closer. The rain had picked up, drumming harder against the roof. I lay there in the dark, listening to it, waiting for the sound of footsteps that never came. But as I drifted towards sleep, a soft creak echoed from the attic above, like someone shifting weight on the old floorboards. I sat up, staring at the ceiling, and wondered if the quiet life I'd built was starting to unravel, one shadow at a time. The days blurred into one another after that night, each one carrying the faint echo of that creak from the attic. I didn't go up there, hadn't in years. Not since I'd stored some old boxes from my parents' place up on the dusty beams. The pull-down stairs were tucked away in the hallway ceiling, a relic of the house's older design, and the thought of climbing them alone in the dim light made my skin crawl. Instead, I told myself it was the house settling, the rain seeping into the eaves, making the wood groan under the weight. Houses in Elmwood did that, especially after a storm. My neighbor, Mrs. Ellis, had mentioned it once over the fence, her voice carrying that neighborly reassurance that came with decades in the same spot. By morning, the unease had dulled to a manageable hum, like the low buzz of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I brewed coffee stronger than usual, the aroma filling the house as I stared out the window over the sink. The backyard was sodden, puddles pooling where the grass met the patio stones. No sign of anything amiss, no footprints, no branches broken against the fence. I sipped slowly, watching a squirrel dart across the lawn, its tail flicking like a question mark. Normal. Everything normal. Work called. And I drove in with the radio off, preferring the quiet to the chatter of morning shows. The office felt busier than usual, phones ringing with claims from the recent rains, flooded basements, cancelled policies. I buried myself in the files, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, casting a sterile glow over the cubicles. Tom from accounting stopped by around noon, leaning on the partition with a styrofoam cup in hand. "Hey, Em, you still look a bit off. Everything good at home? That old place of yours holding up?" I glanced up, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just the weather getting to me. You know how it is, leaky roofs and all." He nodded, sympathetic, and wandered off to the break room. It was kind of him to ask, but I didn't elaborate. What would I say? That I'd seen a face in my window, then in the laundromat glass, and now imagined creaks in the night? He'd laugh it off, suggest I see the doc for stress meds. And maybe he was right. Elmwood wasn't the kind of town for ghost stories. It was PTA meetings and potlucks, not hauntings. The afternoon dragged, sunlight finally breaking through the clouds in weak shafts that slanted across the parking lot. I stepped out for a quick walk to clear my head, circling the strip mall past the nail salon and the thrift store with its bins of faded sweaters. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet asphalt and distant wood smoke from someone's chimney. As I turned the corner toward the alley behind the buildings, I paused at the window of the empty real estate office, vacant for months, the for lease sign peeling at the edges. There, framed in the dusty glass, was the face again. Closer this time, the man's features etched sharper against the reflection of the brick wall behind me. His eyes, dark and unblinking, locked onto mine for what felt like an eternity. No smile, no wave, just that steady regard, as if he knew me or was waiting for me to remember him. My breath caught, and I stepped back, heart racing against my ribs. The alley was empty, a few discarded flyers skittering in the breeze from a tipped-over trash bin. I approached the window cautiously, peering in. The office was bare. A scuffed desk, stacked chairs, shrouded in plastic, shadows pooling in the corners. No one. I pressed my palm against the cool glass, half expecting it to give way, but it held firm, reflecting only my own wide-eyed face back at me. A truck rumbled past on the main road, and I jumped, spinning around. Nothing but the ordinary hum of the afternoon, cars pulling in for tacos. A mother corralling her kids into the minivan. I hurried back inside, the break room door swinging shut behind me with a soft whoosh. Tom was there again, microwaving leftovers, the smell of reheated chili filling the air. "You all right? Saw you out there pacing." "Just getting some air," I muttered, grabbing a water from the fridge to steady my hands. He shrugged and went back to his lunch. Oblivious, but as I sat at my desk, the words blurred on the screen. Who was he? Not a neighbor. I knew the faces around here, the retired couples walking their labs, the young families with minivans in every driveway. And why windows? Always windows, like he was trapped behind the glass, reaching out without quite touching. The drive home that evening felt longer, the sun dipping low and painting the cornfields in shades of amber. I stopped at the gas station on the edge of town, the one with the ancient pumps and the bell that dinged when you pulled in. The attendant, a kid with a name tag reading Jake, nodded as I swiped my card. While the tank filled, I wandered inside for a candy bar, the fluorescent lights buzzing like angry insects. The store was small, shelves stocked with chips and motor oil, a cooler humming in the back. As I paid, my eyes drifted to the wide plate glass window facing the pumps. There he was, outside, his silhouette dark against the fading light, staring in through the reflection. The same sharp jaw, the same immovable gaze. I dropped my change, coins scattering across the counter. Jake looked up, frowning. "Ma'am, you okay?" "Yeah, sorry, just clumsy." I scooped them up, avoiding his eyes, and bolted out, the bell jangling wildly. The lot was empty except for my car and a pickup idling at the air pump. No one near the window, just the empty pumps and the highway, stretching into the dusk. I drove off faster than I should have, tires humming on the pavement, glancing in the rear view every few seconds. Nothing followed. Back home, the house greeted me with its familiar quiet, porch light flickering on automatically as twilight settled. I made pasta for dinner, the sauce simmering on the stove, but I ate standing at the counter, fork in one hand, phone in the other. I scrolled through local news, nothing about break-ins or strangers in town. Just the usual, a bake sale at the church, road work on Route 12. My sister texted from Chicago, "How's Elmwood? Miss you. Come visit soon?" I typed back a quick, "All good busy week," and set the phone down. Appetite gone. Night fell heavy, the stars hidden behind thin clouds. I checked the locks twice, drew the curtains tight, but sleep evaded me. Around midnight, I heard it again, that creak from the attic, slower this time, like footsteps pacing the length of the beams. I lay still, breath shallow, listening as it paused, then resumed. Not the house settling, something deliberate. and in the silence between, I swore I saw a flicker of movement at the edge of the bedroom window curtain, a shadow shifting just beyond the fabric. I pulled the covers higher, eyes fixed on the ceiling, wondering how long I could pretend this was all in my head before the quiet of Elmwood started to feel like a trap. The next morning dawned too bright, sunlight slicing through the curtains like an unwelcome intruder. I hadn't slept more than an hour straight, jolting awake every time the house creaked or a car hummed past on the street. My eyes felt gritty, the kind of tired that settled deep in your bones. And as I shuffled to the kitchen for coffee, the world outside looked sharper, almost accusatory. The backyard was drying out, steam rising faintly from the grass, but I avoided the window over the sink, focusing instead on the drip of the coffee maker. Normal routine, hold on to that. I called in sick to work, my voice steady enough over the phone to convince Rita in HR that it was just a headache from the weather. "Take the day, Emily," she said kindly. "We've got you covered." Hanging up, I paced the living room, the carpet muffling my steps. The house felt heavier today, the air thick with unspoken questions. Who was he, and why me? I pulled out my laptop at the dining table, the screen glowing against the polished wood, and started searching. Vague terms at first, like seeing faces in windows and psychological tricks of light. Forums popped up, threads from people in quiet towns much like Elmwood, sharing stories of shadows that mimicked loved ones or strangers from dreams. Pareidolia, they called it, the brain's way of finding patterns in chaos. Reassuring, almost, but none of them mentioned the same face over and over like a message I couldn't decode. By midday, the unease had twisted into something sharper, a compulsion to check every window in the house. I started with the living room, parting the shears inch by inch, peering out at the empty street where leaves skittered across the pavement like fleeing thoughts. Nothing. The side window by the couch, overlooking the neighbor's hedge, clear. Upstairs, in the guest room that doubled as my home office, the view stretched to the rail trail winding through the trees. I stood there a long time, the desk chair creaking under me as I sat, but the glass showed only my reflection, pale and drawn. Downstairs again, the kitchen, the back door, each one a small victory, a breath held and released. Maybe it was over. Maybe the night had been the peak and daylight would wash it away like the rain had. Hunger nudged me toward the fridge, but as I reached for a yogurt, a sound stopped me, the faint scrape from above, like nails on wood. The attic. I froze, spoon in hand, listening. It came again, rhythmic, deliberate, as if someone were dragging something across the floorboards. My pulse quickened, but I forced myself to move, climbing the basement stairs first to rule out pipes or settling foundation. The basement was cool and dim, concrete walls lined with shelves of canned goods and holiday decorations. No drips, no shifts, just the hum of the water heater. Back upstairs, I stared at the hallway ceiling, the pull-down stairs, a shadowed rectangle in the plaster. I grabbed a broom from the closet, the handle cold in my grip, and extended it toward the cord. With a tug, the stairs unfolded, dust motes swirling in the light from the nearby window. The attic smelled of old paper and insulation, the air stale as I flicked on the bare bulb hanging from a beam. Boxes stacked haphazardly. Photo albums from my college days, my parents' old linens, a trunk of forgotten keepsakes. I poked through them methodically, the floorboards groaning under my weight, but there was nothing out of place. No footprints in the dust, no hidden compartments. At the far end, near the small dormer window that overlooked the roofline, I paused. The glass was grimy, streaked with what looked like fingerprints, but faint, like they'd been wiped away hastily. I wiped it clean with my sleeve, heart thudding, and looked out. The street below was quiet, a delivery truck idling at the corner. No face, just Elmwood going about its day. Relief washed over me, shaky but real, as I descended and folded the stairs away. I spent the afternoon on the couch with a book, the words blurring but the act comforting. The phone rang once, my sister again, checking in. "You sound tired, Em. Everything okay?" I assured her it was, just a bug going around. We chatted about her kids' school projects, the latest Chicago traffic nightmare, normalcy in her voice, a lifeline. By evening the sun had dipped low, casting long shadows through the front windows. I ordered takeout from the diner, Barb's meatloaf special, comfort food delivered in a warm foil container. Eating at the table, I felt the tension ease, the house settling back into its familiar rhythm. But as dusk crept in, painting the rooms in soft purples, I noticed the mail again. The box outside, which I'd emptied that morning, now bulged with envelopes. Frowning, I stepped onto the porch, the air cooling rapidly. Inside the box, more bills, a postcard from a realtor advertising open houses in the neighborhood, and something else. A plain white envelope, no stamp, my name scrawled in neat block letters. No return address. My fingers trembled as I tore it open. A single sheet of paper typed, "I've been watching you for a while. The windows make it easy." No signature. Just those words, stark against the white. I crumpled it, glancing wildly around the street. The neighbors' lights flickered on across the way. A dog barked faintly 2 houses down. No one lurking in the shadows, no car idling suspiciously. Back inside, I locked the door, the deadbolt sliding home with a finality that did little to calm the roar in my ears. Who? How? I paced the kitchen, the takeout forgotten, replaying every sighting. The window at home, the laundromat, the empty office, the gas station, all places I'd been, all glass barriers between me and the ordinary world. It wasn't random. He was following my routine, mirroring it somehow. Night fell fully, the house growing still except for the tick of the clock in the hall. I drew every curtain, checked every lock twice, even wedged a chair under the back doorknob. Sleep was out of the question. Instead, I sat in the armchair by the living room window, the letter clutched in my lap, staring into the dark beyond the fabric. Hours passed, the street silent save for the occasional rustle of wind in the trees. Then around 2, it started, a soft tapping, irregular, at the side window. Tap, pause, tap, tap, like fingers testing the glass. I didn't move, breath held, willing it to stop. It did eventually, fading into the night sounds. But in the quiet that followed, doubt crept in deeper. Was it him, or was I unraveling, turning Elmwood's peace into my own prison of paranoia? The letter burned in my hand, its words looping in my mind. Watching. Easy. I glanced at the window again, half expecting the curtain to bulge inward, and for the first time I wondered if opening the blinds, facing whatever was out there, might be the only way to make it stop, or if that would invite him closer, shattering the fragile glass between us. The clock chimed 3, and the house held its breath with me, waiting for dawn to break the spell. Dawn came slowly, a pale grey light seeping through the edges of the curtains like an afterthought. I hadn't moved from the armchair all night, my neck stiff and my eyes burning from the strain of staring into shadows. The tapping had stopped sometime before 3, replaced by the steady patter of more rain against the roof. No footsteps, no voices, just the house breathing around me, its old bones creaking in sympathy. The letter lay crumpled on the floor where I'd dropped it, its words seared into my memory. Watching. Easy. I rubbed my temples, trying to shake the fog, but the doubt clung like damp air. I forced myself to stand, legs numb from hours of stillness, and shuffled to the kitchen. Coffee first, black, scalding, the bitterness grounding me. The clock on the microwave read 6:47, too early for the world outside to stir, but I needed to do something, anything, to reclaim the day. I glanced at the side window where the tapping had come from, the curtain still drawn tight. No point in looking. Whatever it was gone with the night, or so I told myself. Pouring a second mug, I sat at the table. The wooden chair scraping softly against the linoleum. The takeout from last night sat congealed in its container, a reminder of normalcy abandoned. My phone buzzed on the counter. Rita from work, checking in. "Hope you're feeling better, Emily. Let us know if you need another day." I texted back a vague thanks, promising to be in tomorrow. Lying felt wrong, but explaining. That would open a door I wasn't ready to walk through. Instead, I pulled the laptop closer, the screen's glow harsh in the dim kitchen. More searches this time. Targeted, anonymous letters, suburb stalking, and faces in reflection psychology. Articles filled the page, stories of neighbors with grudges, exes from years back resurfacing, even cases of mistaken identity in small towns where everyone blended into the background. One forum thread caught my eye. A woman in Iowa who'd seen the same shadow in her mirrors, only to realize it was her own reflection distorted by a cracked pane. Simple fixes, they said. Call a glazier, change the angle. But the letter wasn't a reflection. It was paper, ink, my name. I printed it out. No. Wait, I hadn't printed anything. It was handwritten, block letters that didn't match my own scrawl. I unfolded the crumpled sheet again, tracing the edges. Neat, deliberate, like someone practiced to keep it impersonal. Who in Elmwood would do this? Not Tom. He was all dad jokes and weekend golf, not Mrs. Ellis next door with her endless garden talks. A client from work. Someone I'd cut off in traffic on the way to the diner? The possibilities spun, each one more unlikely than the last, turning the familiar streets into a maze of suspects. By mid-morning the rain had eased to a drizzle, the sky a uniform slate. I couldn't stay inside forever. The walls were pressing in, the windows like eyes watching me back. Grabbing my jacket, I stepped out onto the porch. The air cool and heavy with petrichor. The mailbox yawned empty, thank God. No more surprises. I walked the block, hands in pockets, nodding to Mr. Harlan as he retrieved his paper from the driveway. "Morning, Emily. Wet one, huh?" His voice was gruff but kind, the same as always. "Yeah, soggy," I replied, forcing lightness. No mention of faces or notes. Elmwood didn't run on whispers like that. The loop took me past the elementary school, its playground slick and deserted, then back toward home. As I turned the corner, I passed the old Victorian at the end of the street, the one with the wraparound porch and vines choking the railings. It had been empty for months. The sold sign faded in the yard. Curiosity tugged me closer, maybe a fresh start for someone, a break in the routine. The front windows were dark, curtains half drawn, but as I lingered by the sidewalk, a flicker caught my eye. There, in the lower pane, the face again. Not outside, but inside, pressed to the glass from within the house. His expression unchanged, calm, expectant, those dark eyes holding mine without a blink. I stopped dead, roots growing into the concrete. This wasn't my routine, not a place I'd haunt, but he was there, clearer than ever, the morning light etching lines around his mouth, a faint scar on his jaw that I'd missed before. Not a stranger anymore. Something tugged at the edges of memory, like a name on the tip of my tongue. I took a step forward, then another, drawn despite the chill racing up my spine. The porch steps creaked under my weight. Wait, no, I hadn't moved. I was still on the sidewalk, heart hammering, but the sound echoed as if I'd climbed them. Blinking, I looked down, my feet planted firm, unmoving. Yet the creak came again, from the house itself, and in the window he tilted his head slightly, as if acknowledging me. Panic surged, hot and electric. I backed away, nearly tripping over the curb, and ran the last stretch home, the drizzle soaking my hair. Slamming the door, I leaned against it, breaths coming in gasps. The living room felt foreign now, the furniture arranged just so, but off, like a stage set, waiting for the actor. I rushed to the front window, peering through a slit in the curtain. The Victorian stood distant, unchanged, no figure at the glass. But as I turned, my gaze snagged on the hallway mirror. There he was, not in the reflection of the room, but superimposed, his face overlaying mine for a heartbeat before fading into the silver backing. It hit then, a quiet unraveling in the pit of my stomach. Not a stalker, not some shadow from the past. Me. The face was mine, aged perhaps or twisted by the angles of light and fear, but undeniably familiar in its contours. The scar. A childhood fall from the swing set, faded but there if you looked close. The slicked hair, how I'd worn it in high school photos, tucked away in those attic boxes. The sightings, places I'd been, routines I'd built, windows reflecting not just the world, but fragments of myself staring back, pieced together by a mind fraying at the edges. The letter. I snatched it from the floor, unfolding it with shaking hands. The handwriting, mine after all, practiced in moments of idle worry, a note I'd written to myself in a haze of insomnia and left in the mailbox as some twisted test. Watching myself, easy through the glass of my own life. The creaks, the taps, the house, yes, but amplified by ears tuned to every whisper. Isolation in Elmwood, the quiet suburb that cradled secrets instead of sharing them. I sank to the floor, the paper fluttering down beside me. Relief? No, just a hollow echo. The face wasn't coming for me. It was me, all along, peering from the edges of sanity. But as the afternoon light shifted, casting long bars across the carpet, I caught my reflection in the TV screen, dark eyes, sharp jaw, and wondered if knowing changed anything. The tapping might return tonight, or the creak real or not. And in the windows of this house, this town, I'd always see it. The same face, waiting just beyond the glass, a reminder that some shadows you carry inside, no matter how far you run from the quiet. Outside, a car splashed through a puddle on the street, its headlights cutting the gloom early. I didn't get up. Dawn had broken, but the spell lingered, the suburb's peace a thin veil over whatever waited in the reflections.